emergency. Paging Dr. B.
Doctor, give me the news.
Welcome to A Third Opinion with Paul Rodgers and Bob Weldon. Here's the truth about the latest wellness findings in medical news, options and protocols you might not know about. These guys lay it out for you. Straightforward information important to you. And you can always be a part of the show. Call now, 407-774-8255. 407-774-TALK. It's time to get A Third Opinion on News Talk 660 WORL. Here's Paul and Bob.
Thank you and welcome back. I'm Paul Rodgers. My co-host is Bob Weldon. This is A Third Opinion. And each week we provide you, our listeners, with an opportunity to discuss the previously undiscussable. I'm talking to about the complementary procedures and protocols offered by medical professionals, methods that are proven successful and helpful to many patients, but the information is being suppressed, our dear friends, and you're not finding out about it. We don't think that's a very good idea, do we, Bob?
Absolutely not.
We have a caller. Nestor, are you there, sir?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I called about the issue of the gun control. The thing is concerned. I don't know if you guys talking about that issue right now, but
no, we're not.
They're not.
No, we appreciate your call, but did you say gun control?
Yeah, that's correctly.
I think you have the wrong.
I think you may.
Program.
Well, I know there are programs on WORL that do discuss that, Nestor, and we thank you for calling. We thank you for listening, but we're not capable of having that discussion, and we apologize.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
That's all right. You have a great day. Although, guns are heavy metals.
Good segue there, Paul.
And the lead that they expel, if you ingest that, no matter how you ingest it, I mean, if you get in front of a .410 shotgun accidentally, or if you eat the bullet, or if you find lead in some other way, like paint, that's all bad for you. So maybe that's. I thank Nestor for the call. That's sort of on topic.
Yeah, you could definitely get lead poisoning from a gun.
Sure could.
No
and there would be other damaging consequences too.
Right. Well, Paul, we're expecting hopefully Dr. Greenberg. He's going to be calling in unless he's having some issues up in snow country there.
Oh, I don't think it's snowed that, and we're not going to let him off that easy.
No, we're not. Okay.
He's from Baltimore.
He is. He's in Baltimore.
I'll bet you that Dr. Greenberg knows a couple of doctors that I know in Baltimore. I lived there for years, and I love Baltimore. It's a great town. Wonderful
good
restaurants.
Crab cakes.
Oh, out of this world.
Best.
O'Bricky's.
The best.
O'Bricky's Crab House. Famous in Baltimore.
Excellent.
And cracking crabs and drinking a nice cold beer on a hot summer afternoon.
Can't beat that.
You sure can't. With an Oriole game on the radio.
There you go.
Oh, man. Anyway, well,
we're kind of talking about...
That was kind of a lighthearted little departure, and we're happy to...
I hope our listening audience is getting interested in this subject. And I just want to repeat, before we go on a little bit further on this toxic metal issue, which I think is a very big issue, and people may or may not have ever heard of this. But we want people to look at that video because we're going to have a show coming
Let's talk about that video again. Let me give our call-in number again in case we have other listeners that might want to weigh in about a topic that's a little more on topic. 407-774-8255. Oh, we do have a caller. Brian is on the phone. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Can I hear your question, please?
Yes. This is kind of when I was 21. I left my hometown. Had an old-time doctor. Moved out. He always asked me on my annual physical, if I may be too personal, he'd say, "How is your bowel system? When was the last time you had a bowel movement?" Things like that. I go to a younger doctor the rest of my life. In the last 40 years, not one time has a doctor ever asked me about my GI tract and what happened in the medicine practice. He was my former doctor was probably in his late 60s, early 70s. When I was 21,
do you have
to a new doctor. What happened? How come they never ask those kind of questions anymore? What happened in the medical schools?
All right, thank you for the call.
Good question. And Brian, I think the old school doctors, of course, did focus a lot more on nutrition. Paul often refers to his dad, who was way ahead of his time, I believe, in looking at nutrition and how the body functions. I don't know why doctors don't talk more about that. I mean, if you go to a GI doctor, of course, they're specialists. They're going to talk about bowel movements and function. But integrative doctors, they look at that. It's so important. Some people just don't agree with this auto intoxication, but basically reabsorbing toxins. If you look at how the body functions, the liver and the bile, the liver removes toxins. These things we're talking about, xenobiotics and endobiotics that are produced by ourselves, and that goes into bile. The bile goes into the intestinal tract, and it's basically part of the way the body eliminates a lot of these toxins. I don't want to get into the details of phase 1, 2, and 3 detoxification, but this is what takes place every day. And if your colon, if you're not eliminating, if you're not eliminating these toxins through the bowel,
or if you said a different way, if you are retaining these
if you're
toxins.
constipated, which you'd be surprised how many people are just constipated. It's not a bad subject. I don't know why people shy away from it, because it's something we need to do, and it's one of the major detoxifying pathways. Now, this really ties real well in what we're talking about with metal toxicity, because there's 7 forms, 7 channels the body uses to detoxify itself, and the colon is one of the major ones that it's so important to use. Now, kidneys as well, but when you look at this thing, this is so important, and it is really, when patients come through our practice, either the doctor's already talked to them about it, and at the time they come to the nutritional consult with me, that's my first question. That's my very first question. How is your elimination? How often? We get very detailed with that, and because it's important to know how that's functioned before you can move. Really, I don't know how a doctor does it before they move anywhere else. And people often hear this statement on TV for advertisements. 70% of your immune system lies in the gut. Well, that's absolutely correct when you see how the gut works. It's our frontline defense for pathogens that we put in our mouth through food and water. It's important for that to be functioning correctly. The bacteria in our GI tract, our small and large intestinal tract, is important. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's a defense mechanism. It helps us break down our food correctly, and they give us some nutrients. So elimination is key. If you're retaining your fecal matter, your waste products for days on end, those things
you're
are
carrying poison around. It's ridiculous.
So if you detoxify these things we're talking about, they're getting reabsorbed into your gut.
Do something about this. You can do something about this, and it's an easy something. It's a very simple, easy something, and as I've repeatedly say, it's very, very selfish, and it's okay because you're doing something great for yourself, and your health
Right.
is so. Everybody agrees. What's the most important thing you have? Well, health is right up there among 1 or 2.
Well, it's really
okay.
number one. But here's the thing, Paul and Brian. This
Thank
was a
you.
really good
And
question.
thank you for your
Thanks
call.
for the question, because I don't really have an answer for that, really. But I've kind of danced around. So I don't think because medicine has become so specialized. The family practitioner is really what we think about as our primary care physician, and they would be the ones I would think that would focus more on that. But they refer people out.
Let me venture a potential answer to the caller's question. Could it be that back in the day, the family practitioner had to be more of a diagnostician, using his eyesight and his knowledge to figure out what was going on here? And how did he get knowledge? He got knowledge from medical school, and then he got knowledge by asking the patient lots and lots of questions and seeing that patient repeatedly over an extended period of time, getting to know that patient and understand when the patient walked in the door, he could look at the patient and know that there was something that wasn't quite right because he'd seen that patient 30 times over 20 years. They used that methodology, not so much today.
Right. Well, managed care is really taking that out of the picture. You have to see a patient every 5 or 7 minutes in a insurance traditional managed care practice. Unfortunately, insurance dictates a lot of what the doctor does because they have to be paid.
Yes, we visited that last week. We visited that last week, and I almost fell out. We had the folks on from pharmacy specialists, and I almost fell out of my chair when we got to the point where, in our discussion, where you said, well, there's the insurance companies are making these decisions, and I'm thinking to myself, I see these guys in an office in Hartford, Connecticut, sitting around deciding what a patient in Orlando, Florida is going to be able to do with Dr. Jones or Dr. Miller, And that makes no sense.
Yes.
I mean, that removes the doctor-patient relationship. Boom. There's a big wedge driven in
I know
there.
we're going to have future shows. You and I have kind of planned out some future shows where we're going to really delve into the state of our health care. And the poor doctors, listen.
Yeah, it's not the doctor's fault.
These guys want to. They're in medicine to. People have a misconception, I think, about a lot of the medical profession. They're the ones I've worked with. They're truly in it to help human beings. That's why they got into medicine. People think, oh, they're just in it for money. Well, believe me, it's difficult to be a successful doctor financially if you're really taking care of your patients. Insurance does not pay. A lot of things we talk about on this program are not covered by your insurance. Like, for example, we're talking about toxic metals, and hopefully we'll have Dr. Greenberg on here sometime in the program to discuss that. But we do metal toxicity tests.
Yes.
And the reason we do that is, patients have seemed to be through several doctors and not really gotten any response. And so if you go to one doctor, to another doctor, to another doctor, and they basically say, I don't know what's wrong, or it's all in your head, then you need to start looking outside the box.
And that's another topic. Bob, I know my body. I know when there's something goofy. I know when things aren't right, and you have to give into that and recognize it, and then do something about it. So you go see your physician. Well, I don't know what this is. Yeah, but I still know this, and I'm not a hypochondriac. I mean, I've been blessed with good health, and thank you God for that. But you have to know your body, and when you're onto something and you know something isn't right, stay on it, stay with it. And if you haven't seen an integrative physician about any of this, really that's something you should very much consider. Ergo, a third opinion. That's the whole reason for our program, is to bring you this information that has been kind of kept from you. I think quite unfairly, and that's other stuff we'll be talking about as the weeks go by. We're coming up on a break on A Third Opinion. I'm Paul Rodgers. Bob Weldon is my co-host, and we will be back in a couple of minutes. And we're back with A Third Opinion, heard every Saturday morning from 10 to noon on WORL 660 AM in Orlando, Florida. It's a beautiful Saturday in Orlando, Florida. And I wanted to remind everybody while we're doing this, Bob has stepped out of the studio for a minute, leaving me on my own, which is unusual on our program. I want to remind everyone that the Old Florida Outdoor Festival is today at the Recreation Center up in Opopka. It's a great place for you to take your family and enjoy a day in the outdoors. Great food, great vendors, great exhibits, great music. Everything's great, and it's a fabulous venue as well. And so if you could find some time today to go do that, it would be wonderful. Statements made on our program have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. And A Third Opinion is all about us bringing you the information that has been, to date, hidden from you. And it's been hidden by medical regulators who have different agendas. And we're not going to get into that specifically, and we're not specifically referring to doctors, because I think the doctors in our country do a magnificent job, and I'm proud to have been associated with one who was my dad, and have a lot of good physician friends and have visited many, many wonderful doctors. It's not about the medical establishment that we're jumping up and down. In fact, I would come to the defense of doctors every single day of my life. Beautifully trained, and we have the best medical system in the world, and I hope that what's going on now out there with healthcare, sidebar, quick political comment, doesn't mess it all up. Bob, you're back.
Yes, and I do believe Dr. Greenberg is now coming on the air for us. And
great.
So let's bring Dr. Greenberg on. Dr. Greenberg, you there?
Yes, I am.
Dr. Greenberg, this is Paul Rodgers. I'm Bob Weldon's broadcast partner. How are you today, sir?
Well, I'm just fine, thank you.
And you're calling from Baltimore?
A little town called Jarrettsville.
Oh, I know it well. I worked in Baltimore for 15 years back in the 60s. I was on WCBM at that time.
Okay, well, I think it's changed a bit.
Oh, certainly so. Are you familiar with Dr. Howard Moses?
I am.
Very dear friend of mine.
Yes. Is he still practicing medicine?
Well, he thinks he is, but Mary J doesn't think he is. He has retired, but he still is in doing some consulting, I'm told. Dr. Greenberg, we welcome you to the show. and Bob is going to take over from here.
Sure, Alan, good to talk to you again. I've worked with Dr. Greenberg for going on, I don't know, about 15 years or so, I guess, and I met Dr. Greenberg at a seminar I was doing up in Baltimore. Dr. Greenberg, in my opinion, is the leading expert on toxicity when it comes to heavy metals. He's developed a protocol that we actually use in Dr. Zellner's office, and many other physicians around the country use. And we've been talking about the show, Alan. If you would just give a little bit of your background and how you got involved with this topic of heavy metal toxicity, because I think most people really don't understand the importance of it.
Well, of course, I had a good bit of experience in medicine. I graduated from medical school in 1961, which was a few years ago, and I took training in neurology and psychiatry, and then I took a fellowship in biochemistry, and this really helped me a lot because there are a lot of biochemical phenomena that people really don't understand, and they don't connect them with problems with detoxification. One of the things we see all the time is that in order to detoxify your body, all the systems in your body have to be working properly. And very often it's not the case. But we do see that people who have heavy metal toxicity have a wide variety of different medical problems. And they range from all kinds of severe inflammations to impairment of their immune systems, and problems with sleeping, problems with severe fatigue. Of course, one of the huge problems is that all of these toxic metals affect the little organelles in your body, which are called mitochondria. And these little organelles make energy for your body. The problem is the heavy metals destroy the function of the mitochondria so that your body can't make energy, and then you feel tired all the time. And when you don't have enough energy, it affects all of your biochemical systems for repairing your body and for doing a whole range of different biochemical functions, which are absolutely essential. So you can't repair your body, you can't repair your cartilage. Just nothing seems to work properly.
Dr. Greenberg, what is the source when we're talking about metals? What are some of the biggest offenders of toxic metals? I mean, obviously everybody has some degree of metals from the environment, but in your professional opinion, what are some of the major sources for these toxins?
Well, there's no question that in number one, first place is amalgam fillings. And the problem with amalgam fillings is that each filling in your mouth releases about 5,000 trillion atoms of mercury every day.
5,000 trillion?
Exactly.
That's a number. It sounds like our deficit in the government. Is that? That's one of those numbers you can't comprehend.
Wow.
And this is just from one filling. And if you, for example, if you put one amalgam filling in a 10-acre lake, it's going to make the fish uneatable.
So say that again, because I think that's really important. And we're talking about the silver fillings that have been put in people's dental work, their cavities for the last 100 years or so.
What they call silver.
Right. Well, it's not really silver. They're 50% mercury. But say that again, because I think that's really important, Doctor, about what you just said about putting it in a lake.
Well, if you have a 10-acre lake and you put the amount of mercury that's in one filling in a 10-acre lake, you wouldn't be able to eat the fish. So that's pretty amazing.
And we put them in our mouth.
Dr. Greenberg, that is absolutely astounding. Thank you for saying that. That illuminates this in a way that everyone can understand.
Well, it's actually even worse than that.
Oh.
Because let's say that you have a few fillings in your mouth, and most people do. Well, with all this mercury that you're that's being released from your fillings, you're breathing it in. And 80% of what you breathe into your lungs is absorbed. And then your entire intestinal tract is coated with that mercury as well because, it's in your mouth and it's released into your saliva. And, of course, you're not going to spit out the saliva all day long, so you swallow it. So your entire intestinal tract is coated with mercury.
And what does that do to the gut?
Well, actually, it destroys its function. And it impairs the ability of the gut to absorb nutrients properly. It impairs the ability of the gut to, for example, one of the most important functions in the gut, believe it or not, is your immune system, because most of your immune system is sitting there surrounding your intestinal tract. Well, that means that if you have all this mercury coating your gut, then it means that your intestinal tract isn't functioning and your immune system isn't functioning.
And isn't it true? It wipes out. It's like taking a high dose of antibiotics. It wipes out all the good gut flora as well.
Well, that's exactly right. And you'll see, for example, there's a famous bacteria called H. pylori, which is associated with ulcers of the intestinal tract, particularly the stomach, and duodenum. And we know that H. pylori seems to show up in people who have mercury. And it's no surprise, actually.
Yes, Dr. Greenberg, can you stay on with us? We're going up against a break here. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Can you hang on for us?
I certainly can.
This is fascinating. We're going to be back in just a few minutes with Dr. Alan Greenberg, an expert in toxic metal chelation and metals themselves. An interesting topic. And join us back in the next couple of minutes.
We welcome you back to A Third Opinion. I'm Paul Rodgers. My co-host is Bob Weldon. We're here every Saturday morning from 10 to noon on 660 WORL to talk to you about the procedures and protocols that are available with integrative medical professionals and information that you're probably not going to hear on every street corner. Sadly, some of it is specifically and intentionally being kept from you. Our guest is Dr. Alan Greenberg. He is a physician who resides in Baltimore, Maryland. And we're glad to have you on the show, Dr. Greenberg. Welcome back.
We're going to go to Heather, I think.
Oh, we're going to Heather?
Yeah, Heather.
Oh,
Heather has
sorry.
a question.
I got my signals crossed.
That's okay.
Oh, we have a caller. Heather's on the phone. Heather, welcome to the show.
Yes. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Bob.
Thanks for calling.
Of course.
What's your question for Dr. Greenberg?
Yes. Well, I was really fascinated just listening in on the metal toxicity and everything, and it really struck me when he was mentioning the dental amalgams. I actually have dental amalgams myself, so I'm just kind of curious what Dr. Greenberg recommends if he thinks that I should get them removed.
That's a great question,
Thanks,
Heather.
Heather.
And we're going to talk about that.
We're going to respectfully, we're going to hang up if you wouldn't mind, or you are going to, or we're going to, and then you can listen to Dr. Greenberg's answer, okay? Oh,
go ahead.
The question is really an important one.
Okay, go ahead, Alan.
And the problem is it's impossible to really clean up your body completely as long as you have those amalgam fillings in. So I would say you should have your amalgams taken out, but they need to be taken out by someone who's specially trained and who has the special equipment to do the replacement safely.
Yeah, we call those holistic dentistry or mercury-free dentists. We have several here in Orlando.
Right, and this is a really important issue because you can make yourself very sick by taking them out by just an ordinary dentist with no training. Now, the other thing that we're finding is that we have a product which we call Curex, which I formulated, and it's one of the few products that you can really take safely when you have amalgam fillings in your mouth. And so when someone needs to have their fillings taken out, we recommend that they use the Curex for 4 to 6 weeks before they have the fillings removed, because that way they remove a lot of the mercury and make it much less dangerous to replace your fillings.
And we have, Doctor, we do have some dentists here in town too that I know that use the Kelorex product themselves. They take it on a daily basis as a supplement because obviously they're around dental amalgams in their practice in one form or another. And of course, the Kelorex is the product we use of choice. It's an oral chelation that we use at Dr. Zellner's practice when we do a hair analysis and find that someone is actually high in not just mercury, but all the other toxic metals as well.
Dr. Greenberg, I have a question for you, sir. If a person has had their teeth capped, they go through a grinding process where they grind down your teeth and then they put a cap on there. Did the capping include covering up those amalgams?
Well, that's a huge problem because many people will have these crowns put on their teeth and they leave the mercury in frequently. So that the only way you can really get a good idea is probably to do oral mercury vapor test. And they have instruments that can measure the amount of mercury in your mouth. And if you have a high level of mercury in your mouth and most of your teeth are capped, well, you can pretty much bet that you have mercury under those.
And we do use that. That's the Jerome. You're talking about the Jerome machine?
Exactly.
Yes, we do have that in our practice, and we do that free of charge, by the way. We do your questionnaire, as you know, Dr. Greenberg, that you have put together, 30 questions that are basically symptoms, some of them you've already mentioned, of metal toxicity, and then we do that little oral vapor test with that machine. That's a very accurate machine, a very expensive machine, and we do that free of charge at Dr. Zellner's just to see if someone might need to do some further testing. But when it comes to these metals, Doc, talk a little bit about hair analysis because I know there's many ways of testing for toxic metals. What's your experience with that?
Well, a few years ago, we discovered a different way to interpret hair analysis. And until that time, many people complained that they didn't think hair analysis was accurate. But we used a method developed by a PhD named Albert. His name is Cutler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when Dr. Cutler developed this method of reading the hair analysis, we discovered that it opened a whole new window for us, actually, because it can show us when someone no longer has a functional detoxification system. Everybody has a system for detoxifying their bodies, and the problem is that for the most part, we live in such a contaminated environment that our detoxification systems get overwhelmed. And this is particularly true when they have mercury. So what happens is, let's say that you have some mercury fillings. And for each atom of mercury, it takes four molecules of glutathione to detoxify your body. So, as I said before, you're releasing huge amounts of mercury in your mouth from each filling you have. And naturally, very quickly, your body gets depleted of glutathione. Now, glutathione isn't just any old molecule. It's probably the most important molecule that your body makes because it protects you against what we call oxidative stress, and it's also absolutely essential for getting rid of toxic metals and toxic chemicals. And
it actually plays a major role, is this not correct, Doctor, on your phase 1, phase 2 of your liver detoxification of
That's correct. And the significance of that is if it especially plays the most important role in phase 2. Now, in order to get rid of toxic chemicals, you have phase 1, which converts these different chemicals into water-soluble compounds. However, the problem is that some of these water-soluble compounds, once they're formed by phase 1, absolutely must be removed because they're more toxic than they were to begin with when they were in the lipid-soluble phase. So this is a really huge problem because if your phase 2 is inhibited or not working because you have glutathione depletion, then all these chemicals become even more toxic than they were originally.
So really metals, it's particularly mercury, but we also have lead, arsenic, cadmium, and so on. These really disrupt the detoxification process by a number of facets, correct? But one of the main ones is depleting your glutathione storage.
That's exactly right. Now, one of the ways in which this problem shows up, suppose your doctor gives you a medication and you get a side effect. And then he gives you another medication, and you get a side effect to that. And then he gives you a third medicine, and you have a side effect to that. And he can't find a medicine to give you because every single medicine causes a bad side effect. This occurs when you are no longer able to detoxify the chemicals because every pharmaceutical drug is actually a synthetic chemical.
Right. It produces metabolites in the body that need to be detoxified or eliminated.
So that syndrome is a sign that you need to go through some detox procedures.
Absolutely. That's the whole bottom line, is that when you start having a side effect to every single drug that you're given, that means that you need to detoxify.
Amazing. That's amazing.
It's also true, by the way, that if you're sensitive to perfume or diesel fuel or cigarette smoke or any of these other things, and it actually sometimes it can make you really sick just to be exposed to these things like gasoline fumes. It's another sign that you need to detoxify your body and restore the function of your detoxification system because it's obviously not working.
So, Dr. Greenberg, I know we're going to go on a break in a couple of minutes. We have a couple of minutes in this segment. And when you come back, I know we want to talk about, what your recommendations are. Of course, we talked about Kelorex, about chelating, and we talked about removing the amalgams and some things that people can be aware of with these metals. But you were talking a little bit earlier about the immune system. Now, how does toxic metals, mercury and others, compromise our immune system?
Well, that's a really good question. It turns out that your immune system uses certain kinds of molecules which are highly reactive, and they produce a lot of oxidative stress. So that when you don't have any glutathione, your body actually, to protect you against this oxidative stress, it actually stops making the white cells that can kill these bacteria. And the result is that your immune system switches from what we call a Th1 mode to a Th2 mode. In the Th1 mode, your white cells release these very powerful substances which can kill the bacteria and fungi and viruses. In the Th2 mode, which is what happens when you have mercury and your immune system is impaired, the immune system can no longer release these special molecules to kill your white cells.
Dr. Greenberg, let's hold that thought right there. That's excellent information. We're going to go into a break, and then we'll come back and pick up that. We're talking to Dr. Alan Greenberg, an expert in detoxification, particularly where it comes to toxic metals in your health. He has a great protocol. When we come back, we're going to finish his thought on the immune system, and then we want to talk about what does he recommend for detox and how to remove these metals from your body. You're listening to A Third Opinion This is the program that Paul and I are really eager to get out there to our general public so that this type of information can get to the people who need to hear it, those who are looking for an answer, Paul.
Proud to be here every Saturday morning, and Dr. Greenberg is just a fountain of fabulous information, things that we just haven't been exposed to learning, and we will be back with more in just a couple of minutes. And we're back with a third opinion. I'm Paul Rodgers. My co-host is Bob Weldon. And on our program, we talk about many things each week, including regulatory agencies that approve drugs that sometimes kill people. Not all people, but some people. And then the rest of the time, they spend chasing around natural products and nutritional supplements that have never killed or even damaged anyone. And it's a huge factor of confusion for me. I just don't understand it, and that's why we're here on Saturday mornings, because we're gonna rip the cover off of all this stuff and talk about it. Our guest is Dr. Alan Greenberg, who's calling us today from the Baltimore metropolitan area. Dr. Greenberg, welcome back.
Well, thank you.
So we were talking about the Th2 when we left on the immune system and how metals disrupt your immune system. Go ahead and continue with that thought, if you would, Doc.
Well, it actually affects, as I said, your immune system, because your white cells can't produce nitric oxide anymore, and they can't kill these microorganisms anymore. The problem is that people don't even realize this, that it's happening to them. But it results in people developing very serious chronic illnesses, like chronic viral infections, Epstein-Barr virus, hepatitis C, things like this. Many people will develop yeast infections. There's a whole range of different things. So if you have infections that hang on month after month, year after year, it's a pretty good indication that you have metal poisoning.
So, Dr. Greenberg, of course, we were talking, and prior to you coming on, we've been talking, our whole show has been on detoxification, not just metals, but environmental, xenobiotics and endobiotics, things that we have to deal with daily. So let's just talk for the next couple of minutes, if we would, on when you see a patient that has a hair analysis performed, and they've got, and of course, by the way, I might add to our listening audience, Dr. Greenberg is a retired physician, but he is very active. In fact, we use him at Dr. Zellner's practice when we do a screening for metals, toxic metals, and we get our hair analysis back from the patient. We often have Dr. Greenberg consult with us because he's the expert on how to read those, first of all, and some good recommendations. We've helped a lot of patients by his help, and of course, I want to thank you for that, Doctor, because I know you do that through Science Formulas, that your company that produces the Kelorex protocol. And I want to thank you for that, because it really is a great service that you do for patients all over the country, really, that call in and you make your time available, and we appreciate that. But when you see a patient and you get their hair analysis, what would you recommend? Let's say someone's high on aluminum, they're high on mercury, they're high on the ones that people are familiar with, lead. What are your recommendations for them as far as removing those or affecting a improvement in their health condition?
Well, certainly we feel that our product is one of the, probably the safest and the most effective product that you can use, the Kelorex. And the reason it's so safe is because it doesn't have any toxic elements in it. Everything in it is natural. And what it does is it provides glutathione precursors. It provides the substances which allow your body to make glutathione and allow your immune system to start working better. That's a really important issue.
So in itself, it's a chelator. I mean, when people hear the word chelate, they don't really understand what it is. If you could explain what that means, to chelate, and how your formula does that.
Well, actually, the main thing it does is it allows the body to make a lot more glutathione. And as you raise these levels of glutathione on a regular basis, every single day, it allows your body to start getting rid of all this toxic material. Now, at the same time, we know that it's important to get your fillings removed. and they have to be replaced safely. So that's an important part of the process.
I mean, that's the recommended protocol we use, but a lot of people, Doc, as you appreciate, probably really can't afford that or they won't do that. So this is still a safe protocol to use. This chelation, which we use in our practice, is safe to use with the amalgam still in, correct?
That's correct. And there are very few things that are available that are safe to use under those conditions. And certainly the worst thing you can do is subject yourself to very toxic and powerful synthetic chelators like DMPS and DMSA and even EDTA. For one thing, people don't realize that EDTA does not work for mercury. It works fine for lead.
In fact, I think it's FDA approved for lead toxicity, right?
That's correct. But it's not a good idea for people with chronic toxicity because, first of all, many people who have mercury fillings over a long period of time will eventually develop impairment of their kidney function. And this is a really dangerous thing because it will lead to kidney failure eventually. So you don't want to be using these chemicals which cause excretion through your kidney.
Right, and Chelorex is primarily through the gut, through the GI tract, the elimination, correct?
Exactly, and that's one of the things that makes it so much safer. So this is a really important issue. Now, the other issue is that many people will have such a serious impairment of their energy metabolism because of the damage to their mitochondria that, number one, is they will age prematurely. Their hair will turn white prematurely. Their whole body ages.
They look older than they actually are chronologically, right?
That's correct. And this is a really serious thing.
So it could fall into the classification, really, if you think about it, which is the buzzword nowadays, an anti-aging protocol.
Correct. In fact, when I started getting rid of my own fillings and chelating myself and detoxifying my body, my hair was starting to turn white, and it turned dark again, which is pretty interesting. And I'm 77 now, and I still have dark hair.
That's great. That's great. Yes.
The other thing I wanted to mention is that you cannot do this detoxification in a month or two or three. I found that when I was detoxifying my body after having many amalgam fillings over, 30 years probably, I found that it took me, probably 3 years. And I was still putting out large amounts of not just mercury, but lead and aluminum and all kinds of other metals. So
it's really, Doc, before we run out of time, it really is a body burden accumulated over a lifetime. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg, I have a quick question for you. Are dentists still using this material in fillings?
Well, unfortunately, about half of them still are.
And my question to you is, why hasn't that been outlawed if we know all this? If we have all these medical regulators and they're jumping up and down about everything, why haven't they said, stop doing this? It's killing people.
Well, let me just interrupt there because we're going to run out of time, and this is a great topic. Dr. Greenberg, we appreciate you being on today. Would you come back? We're going to have a future show. We're going to be talking about the dental amalgam industry, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about heavy metals, and we're going to talk about why is it the FDA is not protecting us from this. Why haven't they stepped in? This has been well known for many, many centuries. And would you be back on with us again in the future show?
Certainly.
We'd love to have you on, and I appreciate it very much for you coming on today, taking your time out, and we'll talk again to you real soon. Thanks a lot, Doc.
And Dr. Greenberg, thank you for being on the program. I wanted to close by telling you that my father is a graduate of the University of Maryland Medical School in the class of 1924. So I look forward to speaking with you again, sir. This has been illuminating, and you are a delight, and we'll be thrilled to have you back on our program. Thank you, sir. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow, Bob, this has been a wonderful,
great
wonderful
show. I thought
hour.
It'd be great,
this has been a wonderful hour.
We haven't even scratched the surface with his knowledge, let me tell you.
We're gaining on him, baby. We're turning for home, and the rider went to the whip. Get him home. This is A Third Opinion. I'm Paul Rodgers. My co-host is Bob Weldon, and we'll see you next Saturday morning at 10 o'clock.